The night sky was burning, fire falling like rain, pieces of the broken colony ship crashing into the ground, and smoke rising high into the black clouds. The survivors were running in every direction, their voices full of fear, their eyes full of terror. The soldier, his name was Daniel, stood in the middle of the chaos, his heart beating like a drum. His armor cracked, his helmet gone, his hands shaking. He had fought in battles before, but this was different. This was survival. No one was giving orders, no one was leading. It was every man for himself. He saw children crying, men and women stumbling, people pulling each other from burning wreckage. The heat of the fire pressed against his skin, and the smell of smoke filled his lungs. Daniel pushed forward, shouting for others to keep moving, telling them to head for the rocks beyond the crash. There they could hide, there they might live. Then he heard it. A sound that cut through all the noise, not human, not a scream of fear, but a soft cry, almost like a song. He froze, his eyes searching the burning wreck, his ears straining. There it was again, a small voice, weak but clear, calling for help. Daniel ran toward the flames, ignoring the hands that tried to stop him, ignoring the shouts of the survivors who told him he was crazy. He leaped over twisted metal, ducked under a beam of fire, his body moving faster than his mind there. Under the shattered wing of the colony ship, he saw her. At first he thought it was a child, maybe a human girl, but when he got closer, he saw her skin was pale silver, glowing faintly in the firelight, her hair long and dark like shadows, her eyes half open, shining with a strange light. Not human light. She was trapped, her legs pinned under burning metal, the fire closing in around her, smoke choking the air. Daniel's first thought was simple: alien, not human, not one of us. His second thought was even louder: leave her, save yourself. But then he saw her eyes, wide with fear, full of pain, begging silently for life. Something inside him refused to turn away. He threw down his weapon, pushed against the burning metal, the heat searing his hands, the smoke burning his throat, his muscles screaming as he tried to lift the heavy wreck. The alien girl coughed, her small hand reaching out, her voice soft. Like wind through broken glass, she said words he did not understand, but he felt the meaning. Please help me. Daniel roared with effort, pushing harder. The metal shifted inch by inch, his arms trembling, his breath short, his skin blistering, but he did not stop. He could not stop. Finally, the metal rolled free, and he pulled her into his arms, her body light, fragile, burning with fever. He stumbled back, the fire closing in behind him. He carried her through the wreckage, his eyes stinging, his legs heavy, every step a battle, every breath a war. Behind him, the ship exploded, a wave of fire chasing his back. But he leaped forward, diving into the dirt, shielding the girl with his own body. The fire roared over them, but they lived for a moment. Everything was quiet. Only the crackle of flames. Only the sound of his own heartbeat in his ears. He looked down at her, her face pale, her eyes glowing faintly. She whispered something again, strange words, beautiful and sharp. Like crystal breaking. Daniel shook his head. I don't understand, he said. But the girl smiled weakly, as if she did not need him to understand, as if the act of saving her was enough. From the shadows, the survivors called his name, their voices desperate. They had seen what he carried. They had seen the silver skin, the glowing eyes. Daniel! One man shouted. Leave her, she's not human. She's dangerous. Throw it away! Another woman cried. We need to save ourselves, but Daniel did not move. He held the girl tighter, his jaw set, his eyes locked on the people he had sworn to protect. She's alive, he said, his voice firm, steady, louder than the fire, louder than the fear. And as long as she's alive, I won't let her burn. The survivors fell silent, their fear thick in the air. No one came closer. No one helped. They only watched, whispering, doubting, judging. Daniel turned away, carrying the girl into the darkness beyond the fire, his mind full of questions, his heart full of danger. Who was she? Why was she on the ship? Why did her eyes glow? And why, above all, did he feel that saving her was only the beginning, not the end? As he walked, the girl's head rested against his shoulder, her breath shallow, her words soft. She whispered one last thing before sleep took her, a word that sounded like destiny, and Daniel knew without reason, without proof, that his life had just changed forever. The fire behind them burned like a dying sun. But Daniel did not look back. He walked into the dark hills, carrying the alien girl in his arms. The night was cold, the ground rough, every step heavy, yet he refused to stop. The survivors followed at a distance, their whispers sharp like knives. They did not trust her. They did not trust him. Fear spread faster than fire, and fear always looked for someone to blame. Daniel reached a place where the rocks rose like broken teeth, the air cooler, the smoke thinner. He set the girl down gently against the stone, her silver skin glowing faintly in the moonlight, her breath shallow but steady. She opened her eyes. Strange eyes, deep and shining like two small stars. She looked at him, then at the others standing far away, their faces half hidden, their hands tight on weapons. Daniel spoke softly. "You're safe now," though he did not know if she understood. He pulled a cloth from his pack and tried to clean the ash from her face. She winced but did not pull away. One of the men stepped forward, his face hard, his voice full of anger. "She doesn't belong with us, Daniel. You should have left her. She will bring trouble," another woman added. "Aliens caused this crash. Maybe she's part of it." Their voices grew louder, feeding on each other, suspicion like poison in the air. Daniel raised his hand, his voice calm but firm. "She's just a child. Look at her. She can't even stand. She needs help. She's no enemy." But his words did not calm them. They only stared at the girl with eyes full of fear. Then something strange happened. Daniel touched his burned hand, blistered from pulling her out of the fire. The pain sharp, the skin raw. The alien girl saw the wound. Her eyes softened. She reached out slowly, her small hand trembling before Daniel could stop her. She placed her hand on his burn. Heat spread through his arm, but not burning heat. A warm light, gentle and alive. The pain faded. The blisters softened. The skin healed before his eyes, smooth and whole as if the fire had never touched him. Gasps rose from the survivors, fear mixed with wonder. Some stepped back. Others clutched their weapons tighter. Daniel stared at his hand, then at her, his voice low. "You healed me." The alien girl smiled weakly, her eyes closing again, exhausted. Her head falling to the side. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then the whispers returned, louder than before. "She's dangerous," one man said. "Powers like that don't belong here. What if she can control our minds?" A woman asked, "What if she kills us while we sleep?" "She's not human," another voice shouted. "We should get rid of her before it's too late." Daniel stood tall, his body between them and the girl, his voice sharp now. "Enough, she saved me. She could have let me die, but she didn't. She's not our enemy." But even as he spoke, he knew fear was stronger than reason. He saw it in their eyes, the way they looked at her, like she was a weapon, like she was a curse. He turned back to the girl, his thoughts racing. Who was she? How could she heal wounds? Why was she on the ship? And why did she whisper those strange words that felt like secrets too heavy for his ears? The night deepened. The survivors huddled close, watching him, watching her. No one slept easy. Every sound in the dark felt like danger, every shadow a threat. Daniel sat beside her, guarding her, his rifle across his knees, his eyes scanning the rocks, but his thoughts on the girl. Once she opened her eyes again. Weak but clear, she looked at him and spoke. The words foreign, yet her voice carried meaning, like music carrying emotion without language. Daniel leaned close. "I don't understand," he whispered. "But I'll keep you safe." She reached for his arm again, but stopped halfway, her hand trembling. She pointed to the stars above, her eyes full of sadness, her voice soft, like the sound of wind before a storm. Daniel followed her gaze, wondering if her people were out there, wondering if someone was searching for her, or if she was alone, lost forever. He felt the weight of the choice he had made. By saving her, he had changed something. Maybe his life, maybe the future of them all. Behind him, the whispers never stopped. Some fearful, some angry, some desperate. But Daniel did not listen. He only watched the girl as she drifted into sleep again, her silver skin glowing in the moonlight, her secret power hidden but not gone. And in that silence deep inside, Daniel felt the truth. Saving her had been the right choice. But it was also dangerous, more dangerous than the fire, more dangerous than the crash, because secrets like hers did not stay hidden for long. As the night grew darker, the alien world seemed to listen. The wind carrying whispers, the shadows moving closer. Daniel held his weapon tighter, his eyes sharp, his heart steady. He did not know what hunted them out there, but he knew one thing. The girl he had saved was not just an innocent child. She was something more, something powerful, something that could save them or destroy them all, and that secret was now his to guard. The alien night was alive with strange sounds, the kind of sounds that made every human ear tense, faraway cries, deep growls, the rustle of something moving where no wind touched. The survivors pressed close together among the rocks, their eyes wide, their hands tight on weapons. Daniel sat at the edge, watching the darkness, his rifle ready, the alien girl resting against the stone behind him, her silver skin faintly glowing, like a small lantern in the shadows. The whispers of the survivors had not stopped. They spoke of danger, they spoke of curses. They spoke of him as a fool who had brought death into their camp. Daniel heard every word, but he said nothing. His eyes stayed on the dark hills. Then the air changed. It was not sound this time, it was a feeling, a weight pressing on the chest, a cold warning crawling down the spine. Daniel felt it, and when he turned, he saw the girl was already awake. Her glowing eyes looked past him into the shadows, her small hand gripping his arm, her lips whispering in a language he did not know, but her fear needed no translation. "They're coming," Daniel muttered under his breath, not asking but knowing. The survivors heard the growls next. Low at first, then louder, closer. More than one, more than two. The sound of claws on stone, the hiss of breath, the hunger in the dark. Shapes moved at the edge of the firelight, tall bent creatures, their eyes like red coals, their mouths full of sharp teeth, their skin black and rough like cracked rock. The survivors panicked, some raising weapons, some trying to run, but Daniel shouted, his voice cutting through fear. "Hold the line, stay close. They'll pick you off if you scatter." The creatures stepped closer, circling, their growls echoing against the rocks. Their hunger clear, but their eyes were not on the humans, they were on the girl. One of them hissed, its voice broken but sharp. "The lost one, the heir." Daniel's blood ran cold. He looked back at the girl, her glowing eyes wide with fear, her body shaking. She understood, she knew these monsters. The creatures lunged. Daniel fired, the crack of his rifle shattering the night. One creature fell, another leaped over the rocks. Claws out, teeth snapping, the survivors screamed and shot back. The fight exploded like thunder. The girl cried out, her hands glowing, strange light spilling from her fingers. Daniel turned just in time to see her push her palms forward, a wave of bright energy knocking one of the beasts away. The survivors froze in shock, their fear doubling. "She's one of them," someone shouted. But there was no time for doubt. The monsters kept coming, faster, angrier. Daniel fought with everything he had, his rifle firing, his knife flashing, his body moving with raw instinct. He felt claws slash his shoulder. He felt the heat of blood on his skin, but he did not fall. He would not fall. The girl tried again, her power flashing, throwing back the dark shapes, but every time she used it, she grew weaker, her body shaking harder, her eyes dimming. Daniel reached her, standing in front of her, blocking another strike, his blade cutting deep into the beast, its scream shaking the rocks. More creatures circled, their voices hissing. The heir must not live. The heir must die. Daniel's heart pounded, his mind racing. What heir? What truth were they speaking? Why were they hunting her? What had he pulled from the fire? The survivors fought, but their fear was heavy. Some fired blindly, some hid, some looked ready to throw their weapons down. Daniel roared at them, "Fight! If we fall, we all die." His words gave them courage, not much, but enough. They rallied, pushing back with bullets, with blades, with burning scraps pulled from the wreck. Finally, the last of the creatures fell, its body twitching before it stilled. Silence returned, broken only by heavy breathing and the crackle of distant fire. The ground was stained with blood, human and alien both, the survivors shaken, their numbers smaller, their hope thinner. Daniel leaned on his rifle, his chest heaving, his body trembling. Then he turned to the girl. She sat on the ground, her glowing eyes dim, her face pale. She whispered weakly, her words foreign, but Daniel understood their weight. "They were hunting you," he said slowly. "They called you heir. What does it mean?" The girl looked at him, her eyes wet with tears. She shook her head, too weak to explain, too afraid, but Daniel saw it. The truth she carried was heavy, dangerous, and it had nearly killed them all. The survivors stared at her with new fear, whispers spreading again. "She brought them here. She's the reason they found us." Others nodded, fear turning to anger, anger turning to blame. Daniel raised his hand, silencing them, his voice cold, hard. "Without her, more of us would be dead without her. We would already be bones," but even as he spoke, his mind burned with questions. Who was she really? What made her an heir? What power inside her made the monsters fear her and hunt her? The night grew quiet again, but it was not peace, it was waiting. A silence before the next storm. Daniel looked at the girl, fragile yet powerful, feared by monsters, feared by humans, and he knew this was no simple rescue. Saving her had started something far greater, something that would not end with fire or with monsters, something that would change everything. And in the dark, the alien girl closed her eyes, whispering one last word, a word Daniel could not understand, But the tone was clear. It was a word of warning. The worst was still to come. The night ended slowly. The fire in the distance shrinking to embers. The sky turning pale gray, the survivors sat in silence. Their faces tired, their eyes hollow. They had survived the monsters, but their fear had not gone. If anything, it had grown heavier. Daniel sat apart, his back against the rock. The alien girl resting beside him, her silver skin faintly glowing even in the weak daylight. Her breath slow, her eyes closed, she looked fragile. But Daniel knew the truth, she was not weak. She carried something inside her that even monsters feared. The survivors whispered among themselves, their voices sharp and cold. "They called her Air," one said. "What does that mean?" Another answered, "It means trouble. It means she belongs to them, not to us. And we are caught in the middle." A third added, "We should give her up." Before they come again, Daniel heard every word. His jaw tightening, he wanted to shout at them, but he held his silence. Words alone would not change fear. Fear was a chain, and the chain was already locked around their minds. At last the girl opened her eyes, weak but clear. She looked at Daniel, then at the others, and she spoke, her words soft, her language strange, but her tone steady. Daniel frowned. "I don't understand," he said, shaking his head, but then she touched her chest, her glowing eyes meeting his, and with a trembling voice, she spoke one word in broken human speech. "Air!" The survivors gasped, their fear turning into anger. Some stepped back, others raised weapons. Daniel stood quickly, his body shielding her, his voice sharp. "Stand down," he warned. "She's no threat, but inside—" His mind burned with questions. An heir to what, to whom? What power did she carry that even beasts spoke of her like a lost crown? The girl pointed at the sky, her hand shaking. She whispered again in her tongue, words like music, painful and beautiful at once. Daniel could not understand, but he felt the meaning, like echoes of truth pressing against his heart. "She belongs to something greater," he muttered under his breath. "A people, a throne, a destiny." The others did not hear it as destiny. They only heard it as danger. One man stepped forward, his voice hard. "Daniel, listen to me. You saved her fine, but you can't protect us all. If her enemies return, we will all die. She is not worth it." Daniel's eyes narrowed, his voice calm but full of steel. "Every life is worth it," he said. "And I will not hand her over, not to them, not to anyone." The man spat in anger, but he did not push further. The group was divided. Some feared the girl, some hated her, but none had the strength to face Daniel directly. Not yet. The day dragged on, the heat rising, the land dry and cracked. Strange shapes moved on the horizon, shadows watching, never close, never gone. The world itself felt hostile, as if the planet knew their secret and judged them. The girl drank little water, ate nothing, yet she survived. Her glowing eyes sometimes closing, sometimes watching the sky, as if waiting for something or someone. When night came again, Daniel sat with her apart from the others, the stars bright above. The silence deep, he asked her quietly. "Who are you, really?" She looked at him, her lips trembling. Then she touched his chest gently, over his heart, and whispered, "Protector." Daniel froze. The word simple, broken, yet heavy. She had called him protector. Not soldier, not stranger, protector. He wanted answers, but instead he gave her what he could. "If I am your protector, then you are safe." "I promise." She closed her eyes, her body relaxing against the stone. Her trust clear, but as Daniel watched the horizon, he knew danger had not ended at dawn. It came. Dark ships appeared in the sky, black and sharp like knives, moving low, hunting, their engines silent, their shadows long. The survivors panicked, pointing, shouting, some running, some falling to their knees. Daniel's heart pounded, his hands gripping his rifle. The girl's eyes snapped open, wide with terror. She whispered fast in her language, pointing at the ships, her voice shaking. Daniel understood enough. They were not her people. They were her enemies, the ones who wanted the air dead. The ships landed in the valley, dark figures stepping out, tall and armored, their eyes burning red, their weapons glowing. They marched with purpose, spreading out, searching. One of them raised its voice, deep and cruel, its words sharp. "Return the air to us and you may live. Resist, and you all die." The survivors froze, their fear breaking them, some already stepping forward. Ready to betray, Daniel stood tall. His rifle in hand, his eyes hard, he looked back at the girl, her face pale, her body shaking, but her glowing eyes still alive, full of silent pleading. Then he looked at the soldiers approaching, their weapons raised, their voices demanding, and he knew the choice had come. He could give her up, save the humans, save himself, walk away, or he could stand against them, stand for her, for the life he had saved, for the promise he had made. Daniel stepped forward, his voice loud, unshaking. You want her? You'll have to go through me. The alien soldiers paused, their red eyes narrowing, their weapons rising higher. The survivors gasped, some shouted at him, some cursed, some begged, but Daniel did not move. His body stood like a wall between them and the girl. The silence before battle stretched long, heavy, until even the stars above seemed to hold their breath, and the truth was clear now. She was no ordinary child, no simple life to be saved. She was an heir, hunted by enemies, burdened with power, carrying a secret that could change everything. And Daniel, the man who pulled her from the fire, had chosen to stand with her even if it meant war. The sun was low, its weak light spilling across the alien valley. The survivors stood frozen, trapped between fear and betrayal. The black-armored soldiers marched closer, their weapons glowing with deadly power, their voices cold, promising death if the air was not surrendered. Daniel stood firm, his rifle tight in his hands, his jaw set, his heart steady even as fear clawed at him. Behind him, the alien girl clung to the rock, her glowing eyes wide, her small body trembling. The leader of the enemy soldiers stepped forward, his armor dark like obsidian, his voice deep, heavy with command. Human soldier, step aside, give us the air. This is not your fight. Daniel's eyes narrowed, his voice sharp. It is now. The enemy's gaze burned like fire, his tone full of contempt. You risk everything for her. You know nothing of what she is, nothing of what war you invite. I know enough, Daniel said, his voice steady. She's alive and I won't hand her to killers. The survivors behind him whispered furiously, their fear spilling like water through cracks. He's going to get us all killed, one hissed. We should give her up. Another said, Daniel is mad, he's dooming us, a woman cried. The leader raised his hand. The soldiers moved, their weapons lifting as one, deadly light humming at their tips. The girl cried out, her voice breaking. Her words strange but urgent. She grabbed Daniel's arm, her glowing eyes locking on his, her fear clear. She wanted him to run, to save himself, but Daniel shook his head, his voice low. I made a promise, I'm not leaving you. The battle began with a scream of light, bolts of burning energy tearing into the rocks. The survivors scattered, some firing back with human rifles, others dropping their weapons and running into the hills. Daniel fired, his rifle cracking, his aim true. One enemy soldier fell, then another, but more kept coming. Their armor strong, their movements precise, trained killers. The ground shook as explosions tore through stone. The air filled with smoke. The survivors cried out, some fighting desperately, others falling under the storm of fire. Daniel moved fast, dragging the girl behind cover, his mind racing, his body burning with effort, every breath sharp, every heartbeat heavy. Stay low. He shouted to the survivors, but many no longer listened, their fear too great, their loyalty broken. The enemy soldiers pushed closer, their formation tight, their weapons cutting down anyone who stood in their way. The girl pressed her hands together, light spilling from her palms, a small shield of energy forming. It caught one of the blasts, saving Daniel. But the effort left her shaking, her glow dimming. Daniel looked at her, his voice fierce. Save your strength, don't burn yourself out. But she shook her head, her eyes full of tears. She whispered one word he understood. Protect, Daniel roared, firing again, his bullets striking hard. The ground littered with broken armor, but the leader still stood, untouched, his voice echoing. You cannot win, human. You fight for a child you do not understand. Give her to us, and we will spare your kind. Daniel's voice cut back, hard as steel. I don't need to understand. I just need to stand. The leader snarled, his blade of burning light igniting. He stepped forward, cutting through the smoke. His soldiers clearing a path, Daniel rose to meet him, his rifle empty. His knife in his hand, his body broken but unbroken, his eyes burning with defiance. The clash came fast, the leader's blade slicing, Daniel dodging, his knife striking sparks off the black armor. Each blow stronger than his body could bear, but he did not fall. The survivors watched in terror and awe. One man whispered, he's insane. Another said, no. He's buying us time. The girl cried out, her hands glowing again. But her strength was weak. The shield flickered. Barely holding, Daniel fought harder, his blood spilling, his knife shattering. But still he struck, still he resisted. The leader raised his blade for the final strike. Daniel's arms too slow, his body too broken to block. And then, light, the girl screamed, her whole body shining like a star. A burst of energy exploding from her, knocking the soldiers back, throwing the leader across the valley, his armor cracking, his weapon flickering. The survivors shielded their eyes. Some cried out in fear, others in awe. Daniel fell to one knee, his breath gone, his body trembling. He looked at her. At the power blazing from her small frame, her voice echoed, not weak now but strong, full of command. Her words sharp, alien, but her meaning clear. She was no ordinary child. She was the heir, the one they feared, the one they hunted. The leader rose slowly, his armor broken, his eyes burning with rage, his voice a growl. You cannot hide her forever, protector. This is only the beginning. Her blood belongs to us, he signaled, and the soldiers retreated, dragging their fallen, disappearing into the shadows. But his words hung heavy in the air. Daniel collapsed fully, blood soaking his side, his vision dim. The survivors gathered around him, some with shame, some with gratitude, none daring to speak. The girl crawled to him, her glowing hands pressing against his wounds, her power spilling into him, healing, mending, saving, her tears falling on his chest. Daniel's breath steadied, his eyes opening. He looked at her weak smile, her voice soft, broken again, but full of meaning. Protector. Safe, Daniel reached up, his hand brushing her hair, his voice rough but steady. I'm not done yet. The survivors looked at him, then at her, their fear still heavy, but now mixed with something else, respect, awe, a sense that something greater was unfolding before them. And as the night closed in again, the truth was clear. The enemy had struck, and Daniel had nearly fallen, but the air had shown her power, and war had only just begun. The battlefield was silent at last, the smoke drifting away into the alien night. Broken weapons and shattered armor lay scattered across the valley floor. The survivors stood in shock, their faces pale, their eyes wide, the memory of the fight burning inside them. Daniel sat against a rock, his chest rising slowly, his blood drying on his torn armor. He was alive only because of her, the alien girl, the heir, the child he had pulled from the fire. She knelt beside him, her glowing hands pressed against his wounds, her silver skin faint with exhaustion. He felt the warmth of her power flowing into him, not burning, not sharp, but soft, steady, like sunlight after a storm. His pain faded, his skin closed, the bleeding stopped, and strength returned to his limbs. Daniel looked at her, his voice weak but steady. You keep saving me? Why? The girl's glowing eyes lifted to his, her lips trembling as she whispered in broken human speech. Protector. Life for life, her words struck deep. Simple yet heavy, he had saved her from fire. Now she gave her gift back, not just healing, but something more. The survivors whispered again, some in awe, some in fear. She healed him again, one woman said, her voice trembling. She has power beyond us, a man added. We can't keep her. It's too dangerous, but another voice rose, quieter, filled with respect. Without her, we would all be dead. The group was split. Fear against gratitude, suspicion against hope. Their eyes shifting between Daniel and the girl, unsure what future her presence meant. Daniel stood slowly, his body strong again. His hand resting on his rifle, he looked at them, his voice sharp. She is not our enemy. She is the reason we are alive. You saw it with your own eyes. She gave us a gift none of us can understand, but we will not throw it away. The whispers fell silent, though the fear did not vanish. The girl leaned weakly against him, her strength drained, her glow dim. Daniel wrapped his arm around her, steadying her, protecting her. The night grew darker, the stars above burning bright, yet the valley felt heavy, as if the shadows themselves watched. Daniel knew the enemy would not stop. They had called her heir. They had promised to return, and when they did, they would bring war. But the girl had power, not just to destroy but to heal, to save, to give life when death had already won. It was a gift Daniel could not ignore. Later, when the survivors rested, Daniel sat with her apart, the firelight flickering across their faces. He studied her silver skin, her glowing eyes, her small hands trembling after too much power spent. You shouldn't burn yourself like that, he said quietly, his tone softer now. Every time you heal me, you hurt yourself. The girl tilted her head, her voice soft. Gift, share, together. Daniel frowned. Her broken words were hard to follow, but the meaning reached him. She did not see her power as a burden. She saw it as a gift meant to be shared, even if it cost her. He shook his head slowly. That's not how it works. Little one, if you give too much, you'll fade. And I can't let that happen. For a moment, silence. Then she reached out and placed her hand on his chest again. Over his heart, her glowing eyes steady. Protect her. Strong with me. Daniel froze. His throat tight, her words were broken, but the truth was clear. She believed their strength was not separate. It was shared. Her gift bound them together. A howl rose in the distance, sharp and long. The survivors jolted awake, weapons raised, Daniel's body tensed. But the sound faded again into the hills. Only a warning, not yet an attack still. The meaning was clear. The night belonged to hunters, and their fight was not over. The survivors looked at Daniel. Their trust weak but growing, they had seen him bleed. They had seen her save. Some still feared her, but none could deny her gift. Daniel spoke to them, his voice steady. We cannot run from this forever. The enemy will come again. Stronger, we must choose. Either we stand together, or we die alone. Silence answered him, broken only by the crackle of the fire. But in their eyes he saw it, the shift. The spark of resolve. They were afraid, but they had seen courage. They had seen power, and it gave them a choice. The girl leaned against his shoulder, her eyes closing, her small body exhausted, her glow fading into soft silver light. Daniel stayed awake, watching the shadows guarding her. He thought of her gift, not just the healing of wounds, but the way she had changed the survivors, the way she had given them a reason to fight when fear nearly broke them. She was more than an heir, more than a child. She was hope, and hope was the greatest gift of all. As dawn touched the horizon, Daniel whispered to her, though she slept, "You're right, little one. We are strong together, and I'll protect that gift, no matter the cost." The wind carried his words into the valley, the shadows stirring, the war not yet ended. But Daniel no longer feared the coming storm, because now he understood. The girl's gift was not only her power to heal, it was her power to unite, to change hearts, to turn fear into courage, and with that gift, humanity and the air had a chance to survive. The dawn was cold, the sky painted red and gold, but there was no peace in the valley, only silence heavy with dread. The survivors gathered close, their weapons in hand, their eyes on the horizon. They knew the enemy would return. Stronger than before, Daniel stood at the front, his rifle across his chest, his armor cracked, his body tired, but his spirit steady. Beside him sat the alien girl, the heir, her silver skin faintly glowing, her eyes half closed with exhaustion, yet still watching the sky as if she could feel what was coming. The survivors whispered again, fear rising like smoke. "They will bring an army," one said. "We cannot win," another muttered. But someone else added, "We survived before because of her." Because of him. Daniel heard it, and though fear pressed heavy in his chest, he also felt something new. The spark of belief growing among them. The girl's gift was working. Then the sky darkened. The black ships returned, more this time, their shadows falling across the valley like a storm. The ground shook as they landed, the air thick with the sound of engines and marching feet. The enemy army poured out, armored soldiers in lines, weapons glowing, their leader once again at the front, his armor scarred from their last fight. His eyes burning with rage, he raised his voice cold and cruel. "This is the end, humans. The air belongs to us. Hand her over, or be buried where you stand." The survivors trembled, their hands shaking on their weapons. But Daniel stepped forward, his voice steady, loud enough to carry across the valley. "We are done running. We are done fearing. If you want her, you will face us all." The enemy laughed, a cruel sound, and with a wave of his hand, the army advanced. The battle erupted like thunder, weapons firing, the ground tearing, the air filled with screams and smoke. The survivors fought harder than before, their fear turned to fury, their courage burning bright. Daniel led them, moving through the chaos, his rifle blazing, his knife cutting, his voice shouting orders, guiding, protecting, never stopping, never breaking. The girl stood at the center, her hands glowing bright, her shield rising again, this time stronger, wider, protecting the survivors as they fought. Every strike of the enemy crashing against her light. Every time it flickered, she pushed harder, her small body trembling, her breath ragged, but she did not fall. The enemy leader charged through the smoke, his burning blade cutting down everything in his path, his eyes locked on the girl. "The air dies tonight," he roared. Daniel met him head-on, their clash shaking the ground. Blade against blade, strength against strength. Daniel's arms ached, his blood spilled. But he did not retreat. He fought with every ounce of will, every ounce of fury. The leader struck him down, sending him crashing to the dirt. his blade raised for the killing blow. But before it fell, the girl screamed, her whole body blazing with light. Brighter than the sun, a wave of energy exploded outward, throwing the enemy back, shattering their weapons, tearing through their armor. The army staggered, broken, blinded by her power. The leader rose again, his armor cracked, his face twisted with rage, but the girl stepped forward, her glowing eyes fierce, her voice ringing clear in her own tongue. Words full of command, words of royalty. She was no longer a lost child. She was the heir, the rightful ruler. The enemy soldiers froze, their weapons lowering, their heads bowing without choice, the power in her voice binding them, reminding them of who she was. The leader roared in defiance, swinging his blade, but Daniel rose once more, his body broken but his will unbroken. He caught the strike, drove his knife deep, and the leader fell, his scream fading into silence. The battlefield was still, the enemy defeated, their army kneeling, their leader gone, the air filled with the glow of the girl's power, her light soft now, warm, not burning, not violent but peaceful. The survivors stood in awe, their fear gone, their voices hushed. They looked at her not as a curse but as a miracle, the one who had saved them all. Daniel dropped to one knee. Exhausted, his breath ragged, the girl walked to him, her small hand touching his face, her eyes soft, her voice quiet. "Protector, safe," he smiled weakly, his voice rough. "We made it, little one, we made it." The enemy soldiers lowered their weapons fully, bowing to her, their voices rising in a chant, her name spoken in their tongue. A name filled with power, a name of royalty. The survivors looked at Daniel, their faces full of respect. No longer doubting, no longer whispering. They had seen his choice, his courage, his refusal to give her up, and they knew the truth. He had changed everything later when the sun rose high. Ships unlike the black ones appeared in the sky, silver and bright, her people, her true people. They descended with honor, their warriors kneeling before the girl, their voices calling her princess, heir, future queen. They turned to Daniel, their leader, speaking with reverence. "You pulled her from fire, you stood against death. You saved the heir of our world for this. You are no longer only human soldier. You are protector of two peoples, a bridge between our kinds." Daniel did not know what to say. He only looked at the girl, her small smile enough, her eyes glowing softly, and he knew the reward was not power, not honor, not a crown. The true reward was the bond between them, the gift she had given, the hope she carried, the trust she placed in him. The survivors cheered, the alien warriors bowed, the valley filled with light, and Daniel stood tall, the protector of the air, the protector of humanity. And as the stars shone above, he understood. One choice, one moment, pulling a child from fire, had changed the fate of two worlds forever.